Hey, it's Dr. Shiller, and I'm going to speak with you today about fibromyalgia and disability. What I'm going to say goes beyond just fibromyalgia. We're going to be talking about principles that are relevant to also chronic fatigue, to chronic inflammatory illness, to chronic pain problems in general. And this question that comes up over and over that eats at people is like, what is this fibromyalgia thing? Is it a progressive disease that's going to eat up my body and destroy me like some kind of cancer or autoimmune thing? Like, why does it have to be disabling? Am I going to get disabled? Am I going to lose all of my function and lose all of my self-respect and swirl down some sort of whirlpool into a black hole? Like, what's going to happen to me? And the encouraging answer I want to give you is that it depends, that there are actually lots of places where you have an option and you have the potential power to shift the process. And what I'm going to do in this talk is unpack why does disability happen in fibromyalgia and what you can do about it, because there's a lot of hope. So check it out, listen, and hopefully this is useful for you. Okay, so I'm going to use some slides because I'm going to share a lot of information and I want to give you visuals on it, okay? First thing we know is pain. Pain is the core thing that starts to bother so many people with fibromyalgia. And one of the things that even the medical experts agree on is that there's central sensitization. And what does that mean? It means that the pain processing system is turned up. And this is a picture from Scientific American. And basically, you have a pain processing system that is the nerves from your, say, your hand, like if you've injured your hand, like in this diagram, and that signal goes up the nerves to the spinal cord and then through the brain to the parts of the brain that says, ow, my hand hurts, and the part of your brain that gives you that like emotional angst a person often gets when they have pain. And the key thing that you need to know, listen up, is that your pain processing system is like an amplifier. There's several steps where the signal is transferred and processed by a lot of different factors. And that can turn things up like an amplifier so that things that shouldn't hurt, hurt. And if you have fibromyalgia, you probably recognize that experience where things hurt you that didn't used to hurt you. So modern medicine doesn't really agree on a consensus about why central sensitization happens, even though we know a lot of factors that cause it. We know a lot of different variables that can create hyperexcitability and inflammation actually in the brain and activation of certain cellular and biological processes that turn up sensitivity of the brain. And these are some of them. We're not going to spend too much time on all of this, and don't get hung up on it, but stuff that you may have already heard about that you may have been looking into, like inflammation and biochemical or oxidative stress, loss of cellular energy, hormonal changes, dysfunction in the biome or the gut motility or the gut lining, the leaky gut phenomenon, and certain toxicity states. And then there's something called autonomic imbalance. And that's when that stress response is overactive compared to the relaxation response. Look into this if you haven't heard of it before. But the key factor is that you have a system within your brain and spinal cord that touches every bit of your body. It's your autonomic nervous system, and it balances, it biases your energy allocation. Am I in get up and go, fight, flight, freeze, or am I in relax, rest, digest, assimilate nutrients, heal, sleep? They're two very different sets of processes, and every part of you is involved in them. And one of the common things underlying a lot of pain, fatigue, and chronic illnesses is autonomic imbalance. And that's a whole other topic. So look for more information from me or other people about that. It's part of what drives the wheel of all these different changes that give rise to central sensitization and give rise to pain sensitization. And so autonomic balance is also an outcome of pain. When something hurts, like it creates that sense of it's not okay, that sense of loss of safety, and that feeds into the process. So just showing from the diagram that it is a vicious cycle where pain leads to autonomic imbalance, which leads to all of these processes moving forward and worsening of the process. So let's just think about pain for a second, because pain and suffering are profoundly interconnected, but they're not identical. Suffering and pain, the way a person experiences it, are very subjective. They're very conditioned. They're very cultural. There are a lot of different things that affect how much a person suffers when they have pain. And that tends to be in the area of your beliefs and your emotional responses and your thoughts that you have about it. And so, this is just the piece we already saw about all these sort of cellular and biochemical changes that affect pain sensitization. But then there's the interaction with the beliefs, the emotions, and thoughts. And what I'm suggesting to you to start considering is that your suffering is an integration of all of these factors. It's the pain itself, and it's the way your body and mind and emotions respond to that pain. And of course, as I'm sure you've experienced, autonomic imbalance is part of that too. Because when you're suffering, what you're doing, what happens is your being feels distress, it feels danger, and your stress response tends to be activated. And that feeds into all of the physiologic changes like we talked about. It feeds into central sensitization, and it feeds into your beliefs and emotions and thoughts. Because when we're stressed out, it changes the way we receive the world. So if you're living in a reality where you're stressed out a lot of the time, that's feeding the disease process. We're going to talk more about this, but that's one of the places where you potentially have leverage. Okay, let's keep moving. So I just want to point out that you could kind of separate and say, look, there's kind of metabolic processes. It's just a label. We're giving it for ease of understanding. That all these biological processes that we talked about that give rise to central sensitization, they're kind of on the level of metabolism and biochemistry. They're in your cells. They're in your organs, your endocrine system. And then there's your mind-body system, your beliefs, your thoughts, your emotions, right? And your autonomic balance and your central sensitization is kind of in between those two because both of them influence it quite a bit. Your metabolic, biochemical state, your nutrition, a lot of things like that, and your mind-body state. Okay, so let's take this to the next step, right? Because there's this principle. There's a principle called fear avoidance that every good pain practitioner understands. Because basically when a person is afraid of their pain, they don't want to move. And it hurts when you move, so you don't want to move. And it's the most natural, normal thing in the world. And there's no shame and there's no blame. There's just the reality that when things hurt, you naturally don't want to move. And your reflexes know that. If I put my hand in a hot fire, I guard it, I pull it back. It's a protective reflex. And your whole system's organized around protective reflexes. And so if your autonomic system is on fire and you have autonomic imbalance, your protective, avoidant reflexes are going to be even more active. But the problem is when that becomes systemic and when it hurts so you don't move and you get, I'm sorry, I'm just pointing out here, sorry, that autonomic imbalance thing's integrated with everything. But the main thing here to think about is that when all this stuff is happening and you respond to that natural tendency of fear avoidance by not being active, by not moving, you get inactive, your muscles and your tissues get weaker, you become stiff, and that's when disability happens. Disability as a process that happens in response to the way your body and mind are reacting and responding to pain. And it's not your fault, right? A lot of this is things that just creep up on you, and before you know it, you can't do stuff you used to do. And the horrible thing that I've heard from so many people as they get less and less active and more disabled is like, well, I can't take care of my kids. I can't do my job. What happened to me? Who am I? This isn't me. And your sense of self, your beliefs, your emotional state becomes even more out of balance. And it fits into the vicious cycles. And so it's the disability cycle. And every good pain clinic knows this, which is part of why they have behavioral medicine people working together with the pain doctors, working together with the physical therapists and other therapists, because this is a holistic, whole person process. And the better you understand this, the better off you'll be. Let's just kind of follow this through because your movement system of your body, your muscles, your nerves, when you are physically active, you change your physiology for the better. Physical activity is one of the most healthful things you can do. It changes a lot of these metabolic processes. And so when you're inactive and becoming disabled, you're feeding into the underlying physiology that gives rise to pain sensitization. By being inactive, you're generating more inflammation and oxidative stress, potential toxic metabolites, hormonal changes, gut dysfunction. It feeds into the whole process. This isn't about blame and shame. This is about opportunity. This is about understanding all these different factors and unpacking them so you can start to see what's relevant for you, so that you can start to make conscious choices to help yourself heal, to help unwind all of this. Every one of the changes that I put on this slide, all of these different things, are biological, mental, emotional, physiological processes that you have potential choice over. They all can be slowed, stopped, or even reversed, depending on various lifestyle or other choices that you make. And so I'm sharing all this so you can start to make those choices. So the next part of this talk is really to talk about what we can do about it. I'm going to pause and stop here because we've already been at this for about 10 minutes. I'm going to split this into part A and B. So what we just did is part A. Part B will be coming. Look for that. And we'll talk in part B about what do you really do about it. You know, there's a healing process. And that healing process is addressing the metabolic, the mind-body, and the motor or mechanical parts of this. So that's what we'll do in part B. I hope you'll tune in for that. I hope this has been interesting to you. So my work is dedicated to helping you learn and grow in that way. I want to hear about how you like this video. If it's good for you, let me know. Leave feedback in the comments or send me an email. Sign up for my email community so you can get updates about when I produce more content. And I'm here and at your service. Thanks for watching.